triangulated to show that Consumer Protection Act is not the way to treat the medical negligence. There has to be patient safety legislation. It has to be affordable health care like the Obamacare provisions. And health has to be viewed as a comprehensive thing and not as one stakeholder being pitted against the other. So because relationship of a professional with the patient is much bigger than consumer and provider. So this research has been quite, I mean, the evaluator who saw the research was a senior professor in JNU. He thought that that was the pioneering research as far as triangulation method in law was concerned. So we did a statistical analysis and we projected, and the conclusions were drawn on the basis of that to make these recommendations. So I think those examples will show you, it may give you insight. How many of you think you want to use triangulation method? Excellent, that's the thing. Or at least two methods combined. Why many methods? Answer, it will give you comprehensive view of truth. Ordinarily, all methods have certain things in common, and that is the literature review. I told you. Building blocks come from the existing knowledge. Even in patents, prior art. You search for the prior art and then you see where is the invention and you exclude it and then you build. So invention, your research is nothing but invention. It is innovation. It's a knowledge innovation. So clearly articulate the connection between theory and data. Now many of us prepare questionnaires. We prepare questionnaires as if it is an isolated exercise. No. The questionnaire will identify variables from two sources. Either it is from the literature which is there, or it is from pilot study. What is pilot study? If you want to study 100 respondents, you first study 10 respondents and you make a questionnaire based on that. But again, questionnaire has to be grounded in theory. And then means literature review. What has been studied by others? I'll give you an example. Like one of my students did a study on Beda Ghat marble. She grounded that study in a study which was done earlier about how Kalamkari art was marketed by the combined effort of Design Institute, the Society of Kalamkari Farmers, involvement of an NGO and Government of India. So she was looking at Beda Ghat marbles as distinct from Rajasthan marbles and marbles from other places, and was trying to project a case for Beda Ghat marble to be protected as an innovation, as a geographical indication, because it is a special type of marble which evolves in the Narmada Valley of Beda Ghat. So her case has been reported in the American Journal of Humanities and Social Sciences. I had co-authored that case. So that is a case study. So there hers was a 100-page LLM dissertation, but it evolved out of, she married the nephew of Justice Sirpurkar, who was based in Jabalpur, and she is from Nagpur. She was studying with me. So she got married when she was doing LLM. So she had to do this journey to Jabalpur all the time. And in Jabalpur, while waiting for the connecting vehicle, she saw these marble pieces and she found them to be unusual because they were handicrafts, small handicrafts, and the shade of the marble was different. So she got talking to them, and then she found out that these are very unique type of things, but never marketed, never known to people. She herself didn't know. So she decided to do the research on that. See, this is an intellectual curiosity on a broader level. If you want to bring in a comprehensive manner as a legal research, then she had to do the business proposition of that, the policy side of that, and then see it as geographical indication, which is part of intellectual property right law. So this is how you evolve your cases. Now, describe and explain the case selection. Why a particular type of sample, or why a particular type of data, and why particular site, why particular participants, events or cases are chosen. Main thing what you have to show is that either it has not been studied, or that it has been studied but it is inadequately projected. So find that gap. That is the validation. Now, or there is an emerging need for studying this. You will see that in the case studies which I have circulated to you. Pay attention to the alternative explanations and cases which are negative. For example, Beda Ghat can be negatived by saying already there is a study on the marbles of Rajasthan. So she has to say that the handicraft here is particular to that area and the marble is particularly evolving in that particular valley due to the movement of the river against that valley. So she had taken photographs, she had visited these families of artisans, and how they live in abject poverty, how they have a difficulty of marketing it. So this is how we also wanted to do further research on getting the market for that, like how the Fab India concept is, So we were also looking at connecting this innovation to the market. That's the what we call incubator, That's an entrepreneurship cell. I mean, it then moves into corporate area, business area. So those. Then operationalizing constructs. Marble craft as a construct. Geographical indication as a construct, gender equality as a construct, and the agrarian worker women, their definition as a construct, work differentiation as a construct, discrimination as a construct, wage discrimination as a construct. So construct is nothing but concept. I mean, basically the ideas, the different concepts or ideas which are encountered on the way. You have to operationalize it. How do you operationalize? Like there is a vast definition given to the word agrarian worker women. You have to distinguish them from horticultural worker women who are in a plantation sector which might be much more organized. Suppose this woman was working in a tea estate or in a coffee plantation. Her rights would have been protected because that gets covered by ESI and other legislation. But for agriculture, nothing is covering. So this is how you have to distinguish the case. So you operationalize. Operationalizing, you say what it includes, what it doesn't include. You may take only one facet, you may take all the facets. Depending on the feasibility of your study, the time available. You don't have all the time on earth to do your PhD. Your data collection has to be finished within 1 year. So you have to operationalize it based on feasibility. Second is in operationalizing, we also look at ethics. There is research ethics, especially when you are doing survey research. Human subjects are involved, so privacy, confidentiality, non-invasiveness, all these points come in our research also. Anonymity. Provide clear and detailed descriptions of data collection and data collection techniques. Say what counts as data. Researcher will go about how to obtain the data and how to analyze the data. What methodology you are using, that has to be clear. It's not able to capture. So let's go to the next one, and that is small samples. Why qualitative research is not liked? It is not liked vis-a-vis quantitative research, because in quantitative research you do the whole survey. You will have n is equal to not less than 100 in any case. Total samples are not less than 100. They could be bigger. If a death penalty project is being done by Dr. Bajpai, he will involve whole of India and he will have stratified sampling from all zones. Or he may have access to only the Supreme Court. He may choose to do only the Supreme Court cases. But when we do qualitative research, because it is not a survey, you have to be very careful. There are extensive literature which I will circulate to you on how to ensure quality in qualitative research. I am giving only little insights to you on that. So describe the intellectual, social and political significance of the research. It may be one case study, but that case study is a window to the large number of issues. For example, my case study of the agrarian woman who had buffaloes. She knew how to plow, but she would not plow and she lives in eternal cycle of poverty. So I am giving the social significance of that, political significance of that, intellectual significance of that, because nobody has investigated such women. There is a gap in knowledge, and I am talking about why it is important for constructing a better constitutional guarantee for this lady. So gender justice, the justice in workplace, Vishaka is not the only window, workplace, the production process is very important for development, human development. So she is being excluded or she is being discriminated, she is treated unequally. So I am just giving you that example. So like that you find your theoretical support and justification. And second, discuss generalizability or significance beyond the specific cases selected. I have selected the case of this Neela, I am mentioning about it somewhere. Neela is one window. There may be many Neelas in the Nike shoe factory in Vietnam who may be battling the similar reality in that expensive shoe factory. She is a daily wage earner and she is one of those 15,000 who work in this special economic zone in a developing country. So my generalizability of the case study is not limited to agriculture. It is limited to every other sector where regulation is absent, where law's hands are not stretched. So this is called generalizability, significance beyond the specific cases. Now, specify the limitations of the research and anticipate potential reviewer objection. My reviewer may say 1 case, 2 cases you have done, but I'll have to construct it in that example which I've given you, iTunes example or the Baby Manji example. It's very clear how one single case is highlighting the international convention. It is highlighting the significance for the surrogacy industry in India, human rights of the unborn child, the cases of the surrogate mother who is dumped with the child in Manji's case. What are the consequences for her? Where is the state responsibility? Absence of a law to regulate these commercial surrogacy. So many issues are brought out. That's what you have to justify. Discuss the preparation in terms of your own cultural fluency. For example, I could bid for that research in National Law School, Bangalore, because I hailed from agrarian family. I could speak to those illiterate women. I knew that I could speak 3 languages to 3 different types of workforce which are situated in 8 different sites in that big district. So, which is bigger than Delhi actually. Discuss the language skill, appropriate technical or methodological training. I got all the researchers intensive 15 days training on deconstructing themselves. We call it as internalizing the norms of research. We also try to psychoanalyze them through different group dynamic and other kinds of things, so that they go in a group and there is this one. And we also did something like participant observation, neutralizing their cultural what we call a priori sense. So these are all very deep processes which they did with the senior researchers from Tata Institute and other places. Then the last thing is knowledge of the particular research context. We should have the knowledge of that particular research context, which is agrarian worker women. That's why participant observation. These children went with those lungis and old cotton saris just to behave like those people. And there were taboos about women entering certain fields, which our students yielded to, but they wrote about it, they tried to understand and they disagreed with it. So this is how research context has to be understood. Now, this entire report has come from NSF, National Science Foundation, under the aegis of Harvard. I've got the soft version. If any one of you wants, I can email it to you. Or the whole material I can give to Dr. Bajpai. One of you can even collect it on a pen drive from me and you use it whenever you want or get inspired. Now, what are the methodologies that we use in qualitative research? Has it been told so far? I think I'm the first one who is talking about qualitative research extensively, I think. So, because other resource persons may take you through other types. Now, ethnography, historical and comparative analysis. You understand? Ethnography, Simon Roberts example I gave you. Or my example of the primitive community which has got gender justice practices, dispute resolution practices, court systems, anything related to norm. How do they regulate disputes relating to food? How do they regulate women's movement in their community? For example, Onge tribes in Andaman, they move about nude, and that is not a taboo. And then how their rights are violated by the media and others who come and make documentaries on them. There is no one who argues for their privacy, and that is where non-governmental organizations come as having locus standi on behalf of them. So this is how ethnographic, historical and comparative analysis become part of the qualitative doctrinal legal research. Textual and discourse analysis, focus groups, archival and oral history. For example, I introduced my students to a research in terms of sporting habits in colonial Dakshin Kannada in my district. Historical documentation of traditional gyms being burnt down to ashes by the British governor who was passing by were recorded. So people had those memories. And then there were also memories coinciding with the oral history of certain, Bhuta cult. In West Coast we have something called Bhuta cult, where people get impersonating heroes, war heroes. So one of them had a cult where the hero had amputated leg. So the story goes that when the impersonator was impersonating this deity, a British revenue collector passes by, because our district was under Madras presidency. So it was under colonial rule, strongly under the nose of the colonizer. Because Madras to Mangalore journey was very easy for the bosses, and that was a very fertile area. So they would frequent that place for sandalwood, the colonizers always loved areas which were of two types. One is rich in natural resources, second cold. I mean, we were very close to Madikeri, which is considered as Wales of South India. So it was midway between Madras and Madikeri. So we were the target of colonial attackers. So when that cult was happening, the governor shoots this person on one of the legs. So he becomes crippled. So after that, in that particular area, that deity was impersonated as a crippled deity. And there is a name also in the local language. So these are oral histories of colonialism, which were collected, and then we try to see how human rights were violated in those. See, communication students did the collection of the communication. Anthropologists, folklore students did the oral ballad, oral sung tradition of that. And we tried to compare it with the human rights. Similarly, we had a tradition of a woman who gave, because this is I am talking about the locality which has matrilineal culture, where a family name is taken by woman's lineage, property rights are with women. So we were trying to correlate it with the law. And I found that most of the time, women never exercised property right. They gave power of attorney to the brother or the uncle. One reason could be that these were war-torn areas, so for safety, women were not allowed to go out. But eventually it became, women became so subservient that they were neglected, ill-treated, abandoned. And there were cases of women who were owners in paper of acres and acres of land, but lived in abject poverty. There are many interesting things about this place. So each one of you may be coming from an area where there may be such histories. So if you are trying to see it from the legal significance point of view, then that is where your qualitative research comes in. I was talking about this woman who, they say that she was not born, she happened. So this is called the Siri cult. Siri is the woman who happens. So many women get possessed by her during a particular full moon night in around May, and 25,000 women gather in a temple, and then they all get possessed, and after that their psychological ailments are healed, and there is one man who acts as her son. So some people say that this is Oedipus complex relived, because of which their psychological ailments, because of their collective effervescence, get healed, and once a year they rejuvenate themselves. And these are all poor women who come from castes which are disadvantaged. So we were trying to do this analysis of mental health through such folklore practices, and what kind of, we usually did it in newspaper reports and things like that, but we have the analysis. So I was trying to use this in terms of transition into commercialization of such cults. How commercialization, branding of these cults, and so much of money, 25,000 women purchasing even 20 rupees worth things will be a huge business for one night. So how business enterprises built around it, how women were neglected, how their own right to life, right to health, right to dignity was violated, how caste system was reflected in the way they were arranged within the temple. These were the interesting things that our media students and social work students and gender studies students did. So I'm giving you these examples to show how justice, this person whom they impersonate, this lady was the justice giver in that community. She allotted roles to each group, and she was the person who rejected marriage, walked out of the settlement forum, which she said men's settlement forum will never give me justice. So there is this kind of ballad which is sung in that area even now. So the moment Siri is mentioned in every household, it is considered as a threat, because that will result in alteration of power. So the police also cannot make any sense if anybody goes and gives complaint. So many times we who had studied this myth, we had to go and mediate between the police station and the women. Women who were suffering from domestic violence would exhibit that they have Siri, so the man would not even touch them. So it became a good defense in families where women were suffering. It became an uplifting force. So those households had better treatment of women as well. They were scared of these women, because in their frenzy they can hit the man, they can question. So they thought that it is not her, it is that goddess who is manifesting on her. So the faith resulted in switching over of, or in creating a social equilibrium. Although with the modern science and modern media, etc., it is losing that significance. Earlier it was an empowerment strategy which was used by women as well. So this is how cults and oral histories are also very important for us as a norm creating process, as a resolution process for us resolution is important for lawyers. Then observational studies, I gave you the example of agrarian worker women. Interpretation of images and cultural materials. Currently, my one student has done a thesis which is accepted by Thomson Reuters to be published. It is on what we call as cultural expressions. The cultural expressions in WIPO are one category, but WIPO has done nothing except preaching about it. So Philippines has adopted a legislation. So my student was looking at one particular folk art form of Kerala, and she has done an analysis on how it is a cultural expression, what kind of intellectual property right can be used, which kind of legislation, which part of the copyright to what extent, constitution to what extent. So she has argued for protecting these cultural expressions and for a federal legislation in the line of that. So she has done meticulous legal analysis as far as that connecting of the cultural expression to this. And to understand the cultural expression, she went and stayed with that performer for a few days in Kerala. I am sure from Northeast and all other rich places, India is very rich with cultural diversity. There could be many studies emerging out of it. So this is another fertile area for qualitative study. She superimposed it with the interviews and all kinds of documentation, and even her strong disagreement with WIPO, which is trying to brush everybody. I encouraged her to do this research because in Hong Kong I came across a performance where the person was changing the mask as he was doing this dance. He was circulating in movements, and each time his head twisted, there was a different color of mask coming on the face. So it was a mix of dance and magic. In magic also we can do that. So I was told that that particular community has copyrighted this. There is an IP protection. Then it suddenly occurred to me, way back in 2009, then I started observing folk practices. We can also do such copyright protection, So I was thinking, so this is my first experiment on that, and we know centers where regional resources have been documented. I mean, as a little girl and student, I used to go to these centers, and I used to be informer on our folk practices. So we can do that for many other folk practices and urge for a federal legislation on that. So this is how observational studies, interpretation of images and cultural materials. We have interpretation of cultural materials in geographical indications. Puneri Sari, then what is that? Tirupati Laddu, what are these? They are the same. Unstructured and semi-structured interviews to be used. So I don't want to drive you mad with too many details. I can talk whole day on these things because that's the amount of engagement. But I'll just try to connect it to law quickly. Recent convergence between scholars in science and technology studies, like Myriad gene patenting case, the Myriad case. What is that? Science, technology studies and law. I have developed a course on biotechnology law. It is all about science, technology and law in the living material, whether it is plant genetic resource or DNA material, transgenic material. There's a whole lot of scientific vocabulary which is there. Law and social sciences, you can have many of that, like for example, how institutions behave, how courts behave, geometric studies, etc. Information technology, you have got many areas there now, cyber law and international regulation, cyber crime regulation, social media regulation, which is a converging area between media and cyber technology. One thing is that law shares a lot of vocabulary with the social sciences, cultural studies. What is their vocabulary? All of them in their research ask for evidence, they ask for validity, they ask for consent in ethics, they ask for cases, they ask for evolution, they ask for judging, they ask for credibility of facts and evidences, they ask for identity, proof, bias. These are some of the significant terms even in social science research. So the area of law is not exclusive. Qualitative study in law is possible because the area which is there in other studies are, the terminologies in other studies are overlapping in the terminologies that we use in legal research. So those methodologies should be feasible for us also. Then, how are the legal and other truth claims produced and assessed? That's one interesting area. How legal authority intermingles or transforms. For example, in a neonatal unit, how the nurse oversees that, how far her compliance to ethics and compliance to medical law is happening, what are the special considerations, how far her rights are protected, how far her rights are incentivized, her professionalism is incentivized, what are the different professional rules which govern her, that is intermingling. And with the law, how it transforms is also an interesting aspect. This is just an example. There are many examples. So finally, whether it is quantitative study or qualitative study, we have to be very careful on reliability of our sources. We can't simply construct a case. We have to show that we met, we spoke this Kathakali girl. She has to show which Kalamandalam she met, whom did she speak to, there has to be a photograph, there has to be an interview, there has to be a signature. Generalizability, her conclusions on that, how far they can be generalized to other cultural expressions. Valid theory, which theory is she looking into? In our case, we are looking at a legal concept of copyright, or any other IPR. Whereas if we are looking at, let us say, equality, then which valid gender justice, for example, is it radical feminism? Is it cultural feminism? Is it what is the other feminism? Is it liberal feminism? Which is the kind of feminism, or is it a mix of the two? Are the traits of all seen? Contrast and comparisons. Triangulation, I gave you the example, case studies, ethnographic studies. So what we are looking at as quality in qualitative studies, one is feasibility of the study. Feasibility is whether it is feasible to be done. You are not talking something out of the world, it is practical. Second, it is complying to ethics. Then relevance, is it relevant, is it timely, or is it something that was done 200 years ago? What is the relevance of it? Rigor. By rigor we mean methodological rigor, how systematically you are doing the study. Capability of the investigator, we already spoke about it, language, knowledge, earlier publication record. All these are important as far as qualitative, any study it is important, but qualitative also. Then, Rudyard Kipling talks about this. I'll now move on to case study. I've given you the material. So, I'll just give the briefing on both those methods and then you can divide into groups because we have only 50 minutes. Quickly I'll tell you. What is a case study? Rudyard Kipling was the one who said that there are 6 honest serving men, and he talks about the W's. Which are they? Where, when, who, what, why, isn't it?
How.
And the one H, how. So what is a case study? Case study is a strategy and method of qualitative data collection. I center stage qualitative method to you already. You are very clear. The oral history, the focus groups, triangulation, the small sample size, and we don't use the word random sampling here. We call it as snowball sampling. So you go through one death punishment convict, take the official list, and death row prisoner, and then you go through the list and you get 9 others. That is snowball. One sample feeding the other, gathering the other. So here we use that method. We use the word snowball sampling or probability sampling. We don't use the word systematic random sampling. Not every 5th, not every 10th, and not every 5th in group A or strata. Not like that. We don't use that. That is used in the quantitative survey method. So that is the basic difference in qualitative and quantitative study. The type of the sample and the method of inquiry. I already told you. I hope all of you are clear. So do you think with this understanding you are able to gear your study into a qualitative study or a combination of the two? As triangulation. Okay. Now what is a case study? How is case study different from case law? Case law is a case law which comes from the court, reported. There is a confrontation of this legal problem through a litigation in the court or through a dispute in a tribunal. Okay. But in case study it is not. It's a phenomenon that you are observing. It's a microcosm. It's a representative part of a universe. Clear? I went and interviewed 200 agrarian worker women, but I chose Neela as a case study. Neela's experiences are generalizable as far as similarly culturally struggling single women, widowed, poor, working in Vietnam factory or somewhere else in Mexico, all developing countries. Feminization of poverty of Lohia. I can. But her case is not generalizable to other agrarian worker women because she is very unique and distinct. And she represents that microcosm of Dakshin Kannada, where single women tend to live more, remarriages are permitted. She has married thrice, and all the 3 times she got disillusioned with the marriage. So it's a very unique reality. And is her poverty compounded by her single woman status as well? We don't know. And what are her vents, her cultural expressions? Those do not become primary for my legal research, but they become relevant when I am trying to understand her as a gendered being. Clear? Yeah. So, it is a method. Case study is a strategy and method of qualitative data. Strategic management. If I want to manage agrarian worker women, case study helps me. And then here, first I diagnose it, I write the details, I size up the situation, and I recommend action steps. So I need skills in the diagnosis, I need ability to judge correctly, I need tailor-made action. Now, to improve the situation, and then I need to pick such case study which has a possibility of broader application, and then I may assume a role. I may assume a role in talking to Neela and trying to help her to get the widow pension from the government. I may assume a role in going and negotiating to improve her payment by her landlord. I may assume a role in asking the landlord to waive off her interest for the small hand loan that she has taken. I may assume a role in getting her the government scheme for housing for poor single women. You know, that role that you assume in changing the situation is also part of the case study. But that is a little distinction between case study and action research. Clear? Yeah. And then you put an action plan and recommendation in place. My recommendation may flow to all stakeholders or only to the company. Or I may do Neela's study, I may do poor agrarian worker woman in Mexico and another in Thailand. Or I may not do that, I may keep Neela and I may keep others to see how globalization has impacted on feminization of poverty. So I am using the feminist angle, feminist theory, and I am also using the corporatizing practices, and my research may have a reflection on sustainability. Have you read the latest Sustainable Development Goals? Yeah. One of the important aims is to see that wealth is equally distributed. So elimination of poverty, they are not talking about reduction of poverty. So can this have a bearing on that? Because today if you see Scopus and other impact factors, 3 areas are very strongly getting impact factors. One of them is sustainability. Second is violence. Could this be called as economic violence? Yeah. And the third area which is very, very important is supply chain. So one of our management institutes did a case study on the Warkaris, not on the Warkari, Narmada, Nashik Kumbh Mela. How the supply chain worked, how disaster management avenues were tackled during Nashik Kumbh Mela. Whether it is the transport, medical help, dwelling places, food, clean drinking water. So those supply chains, how they work. So our operations management institute did that. Now we have in Pune, we are very close to Pandharpur, madam knows about it. So, on the way to Pandharpur in Jnaneshwar's birthplace near Alandi river, 70,000 warkaris assemble, and then they walk through the Pune city. For 2 days, everything comes to a standstill. Every year this ritual happens in July. So, how for warkaris, waste management project was inducted by the RSS workers in our area is also an interesting case study of supply chain management. So, what is case study then? Either an individual or an event or an institution is taken as the subject of inquiry. It is chosen very carefully. Carefully in the sense you simply can't randomly choose, you have to validate why you choose it. So you have to write a little background. And in that background, theory comes, concepts come, constructs come. And then you give the detail of the case study. And then you try to call out principles. And then you recommend an action. Sometimes we just don't recommend action. As lawyers, we may recommend action. In Neela's case, I recommend action. I can also build a theory. If I was doing it as a sociologist, I would build another theory of feminism in the sense of developing countries or feminism in a globalizing world. Right? So this is how a case study is not just a data. It is not just a method. It is a feeder for theory building. It is a recommender for actions, better actions in case management, in corporate management, in organizational management. Is that clear? That's why I said assuming role, action plan. more clear. First you have to have overview of the situation, then you go thoroughly, you have to thoroughly digest facts and circumstances, and then you review info into exhibits, decide strategic issues, number crunch, apply concepts, check out conflicting opinions, judge the data, support findings with reason and evidence, develop recommendations and action plan. I have given you the case studies in law and case studies in corporates. So each group, when it studies and gives a summary of that, other group will come to know. And then soft version of these data I will hand over to the organizers. Then theory building into inductive theory building or multidisciplinary theory building. I gave you the examples already. And digital case study for comparative law, how across many countries it is there. The websites is 8 nation study which I have given. Then Baby Manji case for ethics and surrogacy. Then gender justice through public, all these I have given you. Now, from there we move to content analysis. Now, for content, we really have shortage of time and too many things. But content analysis I can show you. I will begin with the mother of content analysis research. The very first content analysis research happened in communication media studies, where they looked at the content. If you have time and opportunity, go through the video of Noam Chomsky. Have you heard that name? How many of you have heard Noam Chomsky? My media law students are very familiar with Noam Chomsky. N-O-A-M Chomsky. I used to go through his quotes and he's a public intellectual like Richard Posner. Noam Chomsky wrote number of books. He's one of the celebrated works is Political Economy of Human Rights. He's basically a linguist who moved to the area of multidisciplinary epistemological scholarship. Noam Chomsky has written a book called Manufacturing Consent. You should watch the video of that on YouTube. It's in public domain. Manufacturing consent is about how necessary illusions are created in a democracy to create a popular support for the ruler, and how the rulers manipulate the media. Now, one of the interesting data that he shows to support is how during Vietnam War, the coverage in the New York Post as well as Washington Post and New York Times was manipulated by the ruling clique. We call it as embedded journalism. Like I taught in Media Institute for nearly 4 years, very important courses called Cultural Studies and Political Communication. So about how advertising is done by leaders and things like that. So manufacturing consent is an indication, I mean it has this data about how media content is manipulated. Mostly because of the editorial policy, dependence of media on the revenue by the government. You know, even today the major advertiser is government. So media builds its capital based on government. So editorial policies cannot run against the government. When Indian Express confronted Mrs. Gandhi's emergency, it had to go with blank editorial pages. They protested by keeping the editorial pages blank. So this is how, even though it is a fourth estate, it is in eternal conflict. Now, one of the media content analysis project that I was engaged for 4 times was Global Media Monitoring Project, which is done by WACC, World Association for Christian Communication. Soon after the Beijing Women's Conference, they engaged in this project. Every 5 years they will review the content of the media. And they did something called, they developed a kind of template. In that template, it was told that we had to observe the media on the given day. That day, we will code the projection of women or portrayal of women on these media, television and print media. So we had to do appearance, approximate age, the role play, all that. So there was 0, 1, 2, like that we had to code. What you studied in Atlas yesterday, probably. So the constructs we had to create first. The construct came from number of media theories and communication theories like Althusser, postmodernist, Bordeaux. There are so many theories. So the main argument was that media portrayal of women is poor. Women are treated as secondary participants in media. Media representation of